which...
Well, we need a drum roll for the 3 questions.
Yes, maybe our producer will throw one in. Yeah, we're very curious. First of all, explain before you even say what the 3 questions are. What are they designed for? What are you talking about here? The 3 questions.
The 3 questions we designed simply to enable anybody, irrespective of prior knowledge about this issue, to have an opinion on it, whether or not we should perform sex changes on children and on psychologically vulnerable young people. So that's why they were designed, because what we found was that most people, once you got into the nitty-gritty of it, and in an argument, somebody would say, well, here is a study I have that says it's the best thing that ever happened to kids, and so people just get this sort of 1,000-mile stare, you probably know it, where they just go, how can I even start to have an opinion on this? This is so complicated. And I sort of just said, it's not complicated at all. It's extremely simple. And so we sort of narrowed it down to 3 questions. And the first question is there 100% certainty in the diagnosis of a child with this? I mean, can we be sure that this diagnosis will hold for the rest of this kid's life? Yes or no? And which it is, of course, the answer is no. There's no 100% certainty in anything. And we actually had the quote unquote good fortune that a detransitioner that we work with here had the good sense to write to his physician and say, I was actually borderline. This should never have been done to me. Why didn't you take better care of me? Why didn't you notice that this was what was going on in me? And the leading physician, there are like 3 leading physicians on this in this area here, and they're all women actually. It was I don't know if that's interesting or not, but they are. She wrote back to him and said, and I'm quoting directly, translating anyway. Well, the unfortunate thing is, she writes, that we don't have any diagnostic tools at our disposal. The only thing to enable us to gauge whether or not we diagnose correctly or not. The only thing we can do is listen to whatever people tell us when they come into the clinic. So you would have to then conclude that there is less than 100% chance of hitting the right diagnosis in this case. All right. So that first question, the answer must be no, unless there's something wrong with you, obviously. Then question number 2 is, all right, given that there is not 100% and maybe no certainty at all in the diagnosis, must we then just accept to sacrifice some children who will be given the wrong treatment and have their life ruined on certain levels for the they won't be able to father or foster children, and we all know the consequences of the treatment. Must we accept that some kids just have to get their life ruined so that other children can get the treatment early? And if you say yes to that question, then you out yourself as somebody who, speaking of ethics and morals and Judeo-Christian values, of having absolutely none of those. And it'll shock people when they say that. And that doctor that I just quoted said on the front page of our national newspaper, she said, if nobody regrets, this means we're treating too few. Now, this shocked and horrified, I mean, like all of Denmark, and this is just where they are. The leader of our Stonewall here, I asked her those questions. I had to ask her repeatedly, of course, because they'd really rather not say it. It's the quiet part, right? And finally she came out and she said, yes, we have to accept that some kids' lives are ruined. Then the third question is, it is. And then the third question, of course, is, should we continue to perform sex change operations and medicalization in Denmark or not? Yes or no? It enables anybody to have an opinion about it. It's merely based on diagnostic certainty and ethics. And I think that has made, if I were to pinpoint like one thing that in our communication and getting people engaged in this, that will be it. Because the 1,000-mile stare is gone. Everybody can engage in this and have an opinion on it if they are sort of an honest creed.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, first of all, I think those 3 questions are brilliant, and they definitely do expose the revolutionary belief system of gender ideology, which is sacrificing some for the benefit of the oppressed, is our creed. Like, it is a revolutionary belief. I do want to ask if you've ever gone back and forth within the Rainbow Coalition about the term sex change. Because one thing I've kind of come to really think a lot about in this work is that young people and their families can be misled by the language of gender ideology to believe that sex change is this magical, plausible thing, when in fact what we're talking about is a series of incredibly harsh medical interventions that come with very serious complications and trade-offs and damage to the systems, to the organs. So I'm starting to wonder about that. And it's not a critique so much, but I'm wondering about the terminology. Or is it just that you have to pick a term that the broad population understands what we're talking about, right? Because that's always a barrier. People who are not down the rabbit hole of gender like we are, they just know some of these peripheral terms. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, it's very much the latter. And the reason that we do it is that, as you well know, the everybody who's on the pro side of this game, everybody who's for doing these things to children, never use that term. And there's a reason they didn't use this term. They call it something. There's always some kind of euphemism,
gender affirming care,
gender affirming care, so on and so forth. So yeah, so basically that's sort of why we've narrowed it down. And then if you put child in front of it, for many people that increases the controversiality of it and the horror is that of course we shouldn't do that. So it's calling it what they claim it is, and since they won't call it that, that must mean that this is what we should call it, because there's a reason why they don't want to call it that. And have devised all these ridiculous euphemisms for everything. I mean, they've sort of managed to wrap this ideology into like all the different NGOs and whatever else. I mean, they're all pretty much just like versions of like being called like kittens are cute or something like that. Something that nobody can disagree with. But underneath it all, and it's this whole be kind thing that the Danes have fallen for in a big way. But I started to dawn on the Danes, and certainly, and I've been writing about this for many years now, is that yes, be kind, but there's something unsaid in that be kind motto, and that is be kind, or we're gonna fucking hurt you until you are kind.
Yeah.
And so there is this threat inherent in it. Which has, of course, scared loads of people from having an opinion on it. That combined with, I'm not qualified to have an opinion about that. How would I know? These are doctors and, this is their field. The problem is, what has happened here, and this, of course, has happened before, is when, when the medical world and ideology sort of take each other by the hand. That's when stuff like this happens. And for me, it's no different than the eugenics experiments in the 20s, 30s, and 40s here in Denmark. We sterilized like young women who didn't conform to society's expectations. And, there were all kinds of horrible things done. And I think we never seem to learn. So even though we know the past, we tend not to contextualize things to the extent that we should. And of course, the woke ideology, the gender ideology, and this whole the intersectional feminism, and wants us to shun the past, wants us to forget everything that went on before, because it's the only way you can redefine everything in according to your own ideology. And to a great extent, they've succeeded in doing that. So this is like a car crash in a way, where the windscreen is now lodged in all kinds of parts of society, and you sort of have to pick out the shards like one at a time. And that is just what it is. Just it's like never complain, never explain, just get on with it. But that is the job.